The registration card landed face up before Officer Tyler Voss ever ran the plate. Ruth Ellison did not see it fall. She was looking at the peaches. They had rolled from the small paper sack and settled near the front tire of her silver E-Class, soft, yellow skin bruising against the blacktop. She had bought 6 of them because the next day would have been her anniversary, and her late husband used to say peaches were the only fruit that tasted like summer had taken its time. 3 hours earlier, a nurse at St. Agnes Medical Center had clipped a discharge bracelet around Ruth's wrist and told her the same thing twice. Walk slowly. No stress. Avoid heat. Ruth had nodded because she was good at nodding when people worried over her. She was 68 years old, recently stitched, tired in a way that lived under the skin, and still stubborn enough to drive herself to Willow Creek Market for one small thing that mattered to no one but her. She parked carefully. It took longer than usual. She turned the wheel in small corrections, eased the sedan between 2 white lines, and sat for a moment before opening the door. Her cane waited beside the seat. Her purse sat on the passenger floor. The registration was in the front pocket because her son had told her to keep it where she could reach it. Daniel worried. That was his job as a son. It was also his job as police chief, though Ruth preferred not to think of him that way when he was telling her to eat soup and stop carrying groceries alone. Across the lot, Marcia Greer watched from a dark SUV. Marcia lived 4 houses down from Ruth and had never once crossed the street to say hello. She had complained about Ruth's rose bushes. She had complained about cars in Ruth's driveway after Sunday dinner. Now she watched Ruth step out of the E-Class in a faded cardigan and orthopedic shoes, and the old resentment found a public number to call. I'd like to report a possible vehicle theft, Marcia said into her phone. Older black woman, silver Mercedes. She might be armed. That last sentence changed the call. Officer Tyler Voss heard it 2 miles away and reached for importance before he reached for questions. Possible armed theft. Luxury sedan. Grocery lot. Witness on scene. He did not ask dispatch for the plate. He did not ask whether the caller had seen a weapon. He turned on his lights. By the time Voss pulled in, Ruth had placed 1 grocery bag in the trunk. The peaches were still in her left hand. Step away from the vehicle, he called. Ruth turned slowly. Officer, is something wrong? Hands where I can see them. She set the paper sack down on the trunk ledge and lifted both palms. The hospital bracelet showed white against her brown skin. This is my car, she said. My registration is in my purse. Do not reach for anything. I'm telling you where it is. I said do not reach. The first shoppers stopped near the automatic doors. 1 phone came up, then another. No one stepped closer. Voss looked at the car, then at Ruth, then at the car again. His eyes paused on her shoes, then her cane, then the hood ornament. Who owns this vehicle? I do. Then we'll verify that. My purse is right there. We'll verify it when I say. That was the small trap. He asked for proof and made proof dangerous. Ruth kept her voice low. Officer, I was discharged from the hospital this morning. I had heart surgery. I cannot stand long. For safety, put your hands on the hood. Mid-chan. Hands on the hood. He moved the cane with his boot. Not hard. Just enough. It slid under the bumper of the next car and stopped in the shade. Ruth reached for balance and caught the warm metal of the hood with both hands. A delivery driver in a red shirt stepped out from beside the cart return. Officer, just check her ID, he said. It'll take 10 seconds. Voss turned his head. Stay back. The driver stopped, but he lifted his phone higher. Ruth's purse slipped from her shoulder when Voss turned her. Lipstick rolled out first Saint, then a small orange medicine bottle, then the laminated registration card. It landed face up. Ruth Ellison. The plate number. The make. The address. The delivery driver saw it. Her name's right there. Voss looked down. For 1 second, the whole afternoon could have changed. He moved the card with the side of his boot until it slid beneath the E-Class, half in sun, half in shadow. Paperwork can be stolen too. A sound moved through the watching people. Not outrage, not courage, just discomfort, looking for somewhere to stand. Ruth closed her eyes once, then opened them. My name is Ruth Ellison, she said. Run the plate. Voss took the cuffs from his belt. Hands behind your back. I have stitches. Please don't pull my arms behind me. Stop resisting. She was not resisting. She was standing without her cane, with her medicine on the pavement, with peaches rolling 1 by 1 toward the storm drain. The first cuff closed. Officer Leah Moreno arrived as the second one did. She saw the bracelet, the cane, the card under the car, Ruth's breath shortening in the heat. She opened her mouth. Voss said, I have seniority on scene. Leah closed it. The crowd kept filming. Ruth was guided toward the patrol car, slow because she had no other way to move. Behind her, the registration card stayed under the car, with her name still visible. The proof was on the ground. The officer had already seen it. So why was Ruth still the one being treated like a thief? Save it for the station. Officer Tyler Voss said it without turning around. Ruth Ellison sat in the rear seat with her shoulders drawn tight and her knees angled sideways because there was no comfortable way for her body to fit there. The plastic partition held the heat. A small temperature sticker near the doorframe had gone pale orange in the sun. She looked at it because it was easier than looking at the people outside. The number did not matter. The heat did. Her breath had shortened. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough that each inhale seemed to stop before it finished. A thin line of sweat moved from her temple to her jaw. "Officer," she said through the glass. "I need air." Voss stood near the rear quarter panel, facing the watching shoppers. "She's fine." Officer Leah Moreno heard him and looked toward Ruth. The body-worn camera light on Leah's chest blinked red. It had been blinking the whole time. That did not make Leah braver. It only made the record harder to erase later. "Tyler," she said low, "her color is off." Voss did not lower his voice. "The second they get detained, everything becomes an emergency." Leah glanced at the back seat again. Ruth's forehead touched the glass now. Her eyes were open, but the focus had gone soft. At the edge of the lot, Darnell Price kept the live stream steady. He had moved closer in small increments, never enough to give Voss an excuse, never far enough to be useless. The live stream counter had passed 5,000 and kept climbing. Darnell turned the camera toward the rear window. "She told you she came from the hospital," he called. "You heard her." "Back up," Voss said. "I am backed up." "Then stay quiet." Darnell did not stay quiet. He stopped talking for 3 seconds, then angled the camera toward Leah. That was the kind of pressure nobody trained for. Not a shout, not a crowd rushing forward. Just a lens held steady on the person who still had a choice. Ruth closed her eyes, then opened them. "I want to make a call," she said. "You'll get that later." "I may not have later." Voss laughed once, short and dry. "That's not how this works. It is how rights work." That made a few heads turn. Ruth did not raise her voice. She did not need to. There was something clean about the sentence. Plain enough to survive panic. Plain enough to survive review. Leah took one step toward the rear door. Voss cut her off with a look. "I have seniority on this scene." Leah stopped. The words did their job. They moved responsibility away from her hands and placed it somewhere safer, somewhere higher, somewhere she could tell herself was not hers. Ruth saw the stop. She saw Leah's hand pause near the handle. She understood it. She had watched people pause like that her whole life. At counters, in offices, in parking lots. People who saw the wrong thing happening and waited for permission to call it wrong. "Officer Moreno," Ruth said. Leah looked at her. "One call, please." The please did not sound weak. It sounded precise. Voss checked the crowd again. Darnell's screen faced him now. Comments rose too fast to read. Across the lot, 2 women had stopped pretending to shop. One held a water bottle against her chest and did nothing with it. Voss did the math. "Notmerze." "Math." "Fine," he said. "Make it quick." Leah opened the rear door. Heat rolled out. Up close, Ruth's condition was not something a person could file under attitude. Leah crouched and pulled a small notepad from her pocket. "What number?" Ruth gave her 10 digits. "Slow. Certain." Leah entered them on her call log screen and pressed connect. She held the speaker close enough for Ruth to hear. It rang once. Voss folded his arms. "Who is it? Her lawyer?" It rang twice. Darnell stepped closer. It rang a 3rd time. A man answered with a busy voice. "Ellison." Leah's face changed before Ruth spoke. The name had reached her first N. Ruth leaned toward the speaker. "Daniel," she said. "Baby, it's your mother. I need you to come." Leah looked at Voss. "Tyler." "What? What's her last name?" He did not answer. At the far driveway, 3 county vehicles turned in together without sirens. The first one stopped clean across the exit lane. Doors opened. Uniformed officers stepped out fast. Not toward Voss, not toward the crowd, but toward the rear seat. Then Chief Daniel Ellison stepped into the heat. For 1 second, he stood still. Then he saw Ruth behind the glass. The whole lot shifted without anyone moving very far. Ruth had asked for one call. Voss had made her wait until the cameras made it useful. So if Leah had not opened that door, how long would everyone else have kept calling delay procedure? Deputy County Attorney Claire Madsen placed Voss's draft incident narrative under the document camera. The first line appeared on the wall. Suspect detained after matching armed theft description. Ruth Ellison sat beside the conference table with a soft clinic wrap around her rub. St. Daniel stood behind her chair, not in front of it. She had asked him for that. She did not need a shield. She needed the room to read. Claire set a 911 transcript beside the draft. Caller states possible theft, she said. Caller states possible weapon. Follow-up question from dispatch. None. She turned the page. Officer arrives. No plate check before control. No ownership check before restraint. Medical warning documented on audio. No emergency medical request until after the family call. Tyler Voss sat at the opposite end with his hands flat on his knees. His badge was not on the table. It had already been sealed in a property envelope with a white label and a time entry. His union representative pointed at the transcript. He responded to the call as given. Claire did not look up. He added certainty where the call had suspicion. She placed the medical risk checklist on top of the folder. 3 boxes were printed in black. Recent hospital discharge, visible medical device or bracelet, stated surgical condition. None had been marked in Voss's field notes. Ruth looked at the boxes longer than she looked at him. The boxes were plain. That was what made them hard to argue with. Daniel's jaw moved once, then stopped. Ruth reached back without turning and touched 2 fingers to his sleeve. Not here. Not like this. Claire opened the next packet. Officer Leah Moreno. Leah sat near the side wall, shoulders stiff, eyes on the table. Failure to intervene during the initial detention is sustained. Cooperation after medical risk became clear is documented. Protected witness status attached to her statement. Leah nodded once. No reward. No applause. Just an accurate line. That was more than Ruth had been given in the parking lot. Claire moved to the false call affidavit. Marcia Greer reported a weapon she did not see and a break-in she did not observe. Her prior neighborhood complaints involving Mrs. Ellison are attached. Criminal referral approved for false reporting and misuse of emergency services. A clerk placed Marcia's 911 audio log on the table. Not a rumor. Not a feeling. Affile. Claire read the key line. She might be armed. Then she read the follow-up that never happened. Blank. That blank field did more damage to Marcia than any speech could have. Outside the room, Darnell Price waited on a hallway bench with his delivery bag folded at his feet. He had signed a witness statement on a cracked tablet. The first civilian review board appointment letter would reach him 2 weeks later. Not because he was perfect, because he kept the record alive when everyone else was deciding how little to risk. Voss finally spoke. I made a mistake. Ruth turned toward him then. You made a report, she said. That is worse. The room held the sentence without helping it. Claire read the consequences. Tyler Voss. Emergency suspension sustained. Termination for cause initiated. State decertification referral transmitted. Findings sustained for unlawful detention, excessive restraint, failure to verify ownership evidence, and failure to respond to medical risk. Any pending vehicle theft report using his name would be reviewed for ownership verification. A county administrator stepped forward with a tablet. Officer Voss's field reporting access is disabled effective now. She tapped the screen once. A small gray notice appeared. Access revoked. Voss looked at the tablet longer than he looked at the room. That was the first consequence he could feel. Not outrage. Not public shame. A door closing. Then came the order Daniel had signed that morning and refused to name after himself until Ruth told him not to hide from it. The Ellison standard. No custody in a nonviolent vehicle ownership dispute before plate, vehicle identification, or ownership document review when evidence is present. A stated recent surgery, medical bracelet, medication container, or visible distress triggers medical assessment before transport. A caller's claim of a weapon requires a specific follow-up question and logged answer. Visible ownership documents cannot be dismissed as stolen without supervisor review. A junior officer may activate a protected medical override against a senior officer. Bystander evidence intake opens before the officer narrative is finalized. False emergency weapon claims receive automatic legal review. Then Claire added the part that made the room go still in a quieter way. The new incident form will not submit unless the ownership, verification box, and medical risk box are completed, or a supervisor enters a recorded exception. She placed the sample form under the camera. 2 empty boxes sat near the top. Ownership checked. Medical risk assessed. Below them, the narrative field was locked. A report could not run ahead of the facts anymore. Daniel signed at the bottom with a black pen. Ruth watched the ink dry. It did not undo the heat. It did not lift her from the pavement. It did not put the fruit back in the bag before it bruised. But it changed the next form. A year later, the training room used one photograph on the first slide. Not Ruth's face, not Daniel kneeling, not Voss without his badge. The photograph showed the draft narrative beside the locked ownership verification box. Ruth stood at the front with her cane beside the podium. What would you have read first? She asked. The new recruits looked at the screen. Nobody answered quickly. That was good. Quick answers had nearly killed her. The call saved Ruth Ellison. The standard was written for everyone who would never have that number. This is a fictional story created for dramatic and educational purposes. Names, places, departments, agencies, and events are invented.